Hello, you gorgeous teacher. If you're a new listener and this is your first time, welcome. I'm delighted to have you. What a great episode to start on. And if you are one of my gorgeous, lovely regular listeners, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Now then, today with my lovely guest Jo Gakonga, we really get into it. We have a good old discussion about grammar, approaching it in different ways so that your students can learn it better and also decrease your stress a little bit, because I think grammar can be a little bit sort of difficult to navigate sometimes. So we kind of tackle that side of it. And then we have a little game of lexical tennis where we focus on the dreaded present perfect and we suggest loads of little lexical chunks that you may want to focus on when you're teaching it. So grab a pen and let's get into it. Hi, this is Erin, and welcome to Everything EFL, my little podcast about English language teaching and other teachy stuff too. Credit and honourable mentions will be given during the episode or in the show notes. Let's crack on. So my guest this week is a bit of a gem. She's a freelance teacher, educator, CELTA tutor and assessor. She is the founder of elttraining.com, a website which runs online teacher development courses. And if that wasn't enough, she has tons of free content on there as well. And it's clear, it's concise, and it's really accessible. So I'm delighted to welcome Jo Gakonga. Hi, Jo. How are you?
Hi, Erin. Thanks for asking me. Nice to be here.
Good stuff. Just for the audience, could you just give us a little bit of information?
Sure. It's hard to know where to start. I've been teaching for quite a long time, about 30 years actually, since I first stumbled into the EFL classroom. I've worked in a lot of different contexts, in overseas, in the UK, in ESOL, in EFL, in FE, further education, in HE, in universities. And now I work freelance since April last year. I took voluntary severance from Warwick University and I'm working just on my website. And I have the small task of finishing off a PhD. So, I'm quite busy.
You're nothing if not an inspiration. I'll give you that.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you to say so. Very nice of you to say so.
So we are here to discuss the dreaded, or not, grammar. I think we can all agree it can be a sore point for teachers and students alike. But I think it's safe to say that there are definitely ways to engage your students and make your lessons and your grammar lessons meaningful. So that's what we're going to chat about today. So in your experience, do you find that teachers often struggle with grammar, and what issues have they highlighted to you?
Yeah, I think it's often that sort of bogeyman, particularly for trainee teachers. So I've been a CELTA tutor for over 20 years now. I'm very old, and I think often the grammar lesson, is the one that trainees sort of dread, and I think there are two reasons for that. One is that some trainees just don't know the grammar rules themselves, particularly if their first language is English, because they've never learnt it that way. And so, they don't know. They wouldn't use it wrongly, obviously, but they don't know how to explain that. So that's a big one, particularly for people whose first language is English. And then the second one is that because of that often, but this happens with both groups of people, they go and research it and they think, oh my word, it's really, really complicated. And then they lecture and just tell the learners all about everything to do with this particular grammar point that they've researched so carefully. And I think also learners whose first language isn't English, who do have, or whose first language is English, but who have a good knowledge of grammar. I mean, of course, those people exist too. I think there's often a tendency to feel as if you've got to tell the learners all about it. And that tends to end up as a sort of grammar lecture. And frankly, nobody likes a grammar lecture. And it's not very helpful, I don't think, generally speaking.
Yeah. And there are so many grammar points as well that are so complex. I'm doing comparatives and superlatives. And
Mm.
I actually quite enjoy teaching grammar, but I don't like doing that because there are so many silly little rules and there's so much to it. And then you've got not only adjectives, but adverbs. And then you've got like the quantifiers, and it's absolutely massive. And
Sure.
I think you have to pick and choose. Am I going to look at everything, or am I going to just focus on one or two things?
Absolutely. And I think that exactly is, you put your foot, you put your finger even exactly on it, is which part of your anatomy you're going to put on it. I think it's your finger. I was going for foot at first. I don't know why. Anyway, I think that is often the issue, that people kind of feel like, I've got to tell them everything from the beginning to the end. And of course you don't. You have to choose wisely a part which is useful for the learners, taking advantage of the things that they already know and not overloading them with things that they don't need yet. So that's the skill, I think, is to choose the appropriate bit that fits with the time that you've got available,
which is never enough.
no, but I think the other thing is that, people, especially novice teachers, trainee teachers, have this feeling they've got to give this content, and actually what they really have to do is give a small amount of content and allow time for practice. So that is the key for my money.
And I think also, like, if you do sort of end up telling the students loads of stuff, a lot of students, I think, would naturally feed into that because they're hungry for it, they're thirsty for it, and they think the more they can scribble down, the more they're learning. But all you're doing is giving them cognitive overload, I think.
Yes, I would completely agree. And I think, it's interesting because what you said right at the beginning, that it's grammar something that learners may feel worried about too, but actually learners tend to like learning grammar. I think, in my experience, if you ask them, what do you want to learn, they'll say grammar and speaking.
Don't you think, though, they're under an arguably misguided notion that learning grammar will improve their speaking?
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think there's a feeling that, if I've learned the grammar, then I've gone away knowing something. It feels
concrete.
Exactly. And that is not, just because you've learned the form of something doesn't mean you'll be able to use it. And that's the trick, of course.
And I think sort of highlighting it in natural contexts as well. Like, we've been watching a YouTube video this week, and we've been focusing on different things. Like the first day we did general understanding. The second day we highlighted like functional language of advice. And then as part of my comparatives and superlatives lecture, we're going to look at it again. Lessons. We're going to look at it again.
Freudian slip there, then.
I know. And then we're gonna identify comparative phrases in there, because there are a few as well. So looking at it in context, I think, is very, very important.
Absolutely. No, and I think that sort of guided discovery approach too is, makes it a lot more memorable often for learners.
Absolutely. So I think you may have already kind of covered this, but maybe you can give us a bit more information about your philosophy or approach to teaching grammar, if you were to break it down into sort of a few like top tips or steps or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I kind of struggle with the idea of, a philosophy or an approach, because I think that there are no, my personal philosophy of life generally is that there aren't right answers. There are answers which probably work better than others in a particular context, and that you have to, work out probably through trial and error what those answers are for you and your learners and the context. But I think there are some things which are really important to keep in mind. And I've got a nice little acronym for this, and it's CAMP.
Ooh, CAMP.
C-A-M-P. And I think C stands for context, A stands for ask, not tell, and MP stands for meaningful practice. And those, for me, are the three really key elements to teaching grammar successfully and communicatively. So we talked before, you mentioned about context, and I think you're absolutely right that is key, that having language in a context which is clear and authentic, and that doesn't mean authentic material necessarily. It means that it's not a kind of a forced conversation. It sounds like something that an English speaking person would say, even if it wasn't something that an English person actually did say. it sounds like it would be reasonable. That, the context is generative. It gives you lots of possibilities of making, you haven't just got one example within that context, there's several examples and possibilities for making more. And that the context is engaging. So I think that those things are really important about a context.
Yeah, it has to mean something or be relevant to the students somehow, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I suppose, again, that's sort of my philosophy of learning generally, is that you don't learn much if you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
And so it's not that it has to be all singing or dancing, but you have to spark an interest in your learners. That's certainly very helpful, I think, in not just for teaching grammar, but for teaching it anything, actually, everything.
Yeah.
That's the sort of the number one.
Yeah.
So context, I think, is really important. That's my big one. And then I think when you come to actually trying to tell learners about grammar, I think that asking them questions rather than telling them is better, generally. So I think that, you can ask questions to elicit answers. So finding out what they know. I mean, if you elicit from them, if you try and ask them what they already know, and if the answers are there, then one, that gives you more information about what they already know. So you're less likely to go over again all the stuff they already know. And two, it allows them to sort of know what they already know and to sort of remember that. So that's helpful, I think. So eliciting, not to the extent, I think you have to be a bit careful with this, because I think it can end up being I've seen it happen with trainee teachers where it's guess what's on my mind game. It's sort of what's this used for? Is this or this? And the learners are sitting going, we don't know.
Yeah.
I ask another question and no, they don't know. Just tell them. It's okay to tell them if they don't know. But you could try asking them first, because they might know. And if they do know, then that's better.
Yeah, kind of guide them down that road. I mean, I once observed a teacher and he'd done will for something. Mm-hmm. As we all know, there's a million different functions for will. And his first review question was, how do we use will? And I was like, oh, yes. Okay. Well, and it went downhill from there.
And I think this is the thing, isn't it? Is that, and again, it's coming back to what we were saying before about being able to choose your appropriately the bit that you're going to focus on in that lesson, perhaps. So that's I think a listening is really important. And then also, obviously, checking that they've understood. On the basis that if you don't ask them, you don't know if they've understood. And again, also, I think asking those questions helps to clarify it for the learners. So I think that that's helpful. So asking, not telling, that's my sort of second thing. Good context, asking, not telling, and then meaningful practice. And I think that that's the real key. Yeah. Is that what happens too often, the problem that teachers often fall into is that they end up spending the majority of the time explaining at length and then giving some sort of gap fill type of practice, which, that's not useless, but it doesn't mean that you can use the language in a reasonably authentic kind of way. And that's the key. So I think prioritizing meaningful practice for me, those are sort of the three really important pillars, if you like, of teaching grammar.
And then I think I'm going to add on to that. It's not going to fit with your little acronym, but review. Like, I mean, just doing that one little bit of practice, you need to sort of keep looking at it, or even just getting the grammar to appear somehow. So if you're doing, let's say, you want to review some language and you're doing just like a quick gap fill or a circle the correct answer, or you're looking at a dialogue or something, you can throw a bit of that previous grammar into that dialogue or into that sentence. So just again, they're just being exposed to it. Because they just, I mean, we've all done comparatives or the present perfect, and they've all studied it a million times, but they make the same mistakes, or they don't know when to use it. Or passive, perfect example, everybody's studied it, they have no idea how to use it, and it's because they do the lesson and they move on, I think.
Yes. Yeah, no. How about CAMPR? We could have my camp, and then we could add R on the end for review.
CAMPR. Yeah.
CAMPR.
Okay.
How about that?
All right. Sweet. I was thinking about that, but I just thought, oh, maybe she'll get upset that I'm
You've overtaken my acronym. How dare you? How dare you?
I like to think I've embellished it.
I like it. I
I've
like
put some jewelry on it.
Perfect. Yeah, no, it's
Brilliant.
always a bit of collaboration is always a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. And do you know what? I really miss that. We're kind of in separate classrooms at the moment. With all the restrictions, and there's no staff room, and it's just anyway, enough about my problems. So you've already identified like one common mistake that teachers make, like too much explaining and gap fill and not enough meaningful practice or review. What other sort of common mistakes do you think teachers make when they're teaching grammar?
I think, what else did you say? I just was thinking, I hope you're going to cut this bit out, because
I might not.
Yeah. That's very mean. Yeah, so that one's the big one. I think not giving enough time for practice. That tends to be the one that people fall into. And perhaps, I know what I was going to say. That thing that we identified earlier of trying to cover everything from the beginning, especially at higher levels. So it's not so bad at lower levels, because there's, you're kind of near the beginning anyway. But when you get to higher levels, you're trying to compare maybe 2 or 3 different forms or something of that nature, and people feel like, well, I've got to explain all of those individual forms before I compare them. And of course you don't, because they already know them.
And I think, again, like they feed into it, they eat it up, they're like scribbling everything down. They think, oh, this is brilliant, And I think sometimes we kind of get the mistaken idea that just because they're higher level, they're going to remember it. Like they've somehow got more of a capacity to remember stuff, but I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
No, I think that review is, again, well, it's just what you said, review. I mean, that's the issue, isn't it? It's about ensuring that you've got this perhaps, but a light touch approach to what's this particular structure. Look at that structure there. What is that, by the way? Rather than, right, now let's go right back to the beginning and go through the whole thing again.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what is the grammar point that causes the most issues?
Well, I think the present perfect is the usual bogeyman for, again, I keep using that word, I don't know why I've got that in my head, but it's the big bad one for a lot of learners. I mean, the issues are, of course, that in lots of languages, the present perfect the meaning of the present perfect just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There are several meanings, at least 4 or 5 meanings of it anyway, some of which seem to be completely at odds with each other. I was talking to my son. My oldest son is 22, and he is in China. Just started his first English language teaching job.
Fabulous.
So we had a conversation this morning. He said, "Mom, what is the difference between I've been there and I went there?" And so we had quite a conversation about this, and we came up with the sort of that idea of, I've eaten squid could be any time in the past. Maybe many times, maybe once, but I've eaten breakfast is definitely this morning. But it's exactly the same form. The form is exactly the same. They're both bits of food. Why is one any time in the past and one today? It's only context, really. So I think that's why it's so difficult. I mean, the form's a bit tricky, but mainly it's just those multiple meanings and the lack of one-for-one translation value in many languages.
And like it's you'd think that course books would accommodate it a little bit more, rather than just having 5B present perfect or whatever. Like it should be, I think it needs to be approached in loads of different ways, loads of different contexts, all the way through the course book, because
I agree,
it just, they never get it. It actually boggles my mind when students use it correctly. I actually get from intermediate up. Like, if an intermediate student has a fairly decent grasp of it, I'm genuinely surprised, and I don't mean that in any bad way. But it's just because it's such a minefield, and they've grasped something, and they've got it, and they've, even if it's just one phrase like I haven't done it yet or something, you're like, oh my god,
and I think that's it. I know you had an interview with Hugh Deller not so long ago. I listened to the podcast, and he's really about teaching these things in a lexical way, and I think he's right that often with that sort of thing, it's about it's about the colligation. It's about when you use it in with the rest of the, so there's fixed phrases of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that leads me to my next point, which is teaching lexically. Like, I think it would be nice if we can take it in turns, suggesting practical examples of those fixed expressions or chunks of language with the present perfect, just to give any teachers listening an idea of how to incorporate this lexical approach. And I think like you say, the present perfect is absolutely perfect for this, because not only does it contextualize, but there are actually, because it's such a common grammar point, there are a million different grammar chunks.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. Would you like to go first?
Okay, well, I'm going to start with a really obvious have you ever.
Oh, damn it. I can cross that one off my list.
Nice little tennis game here, isn't it? I've got a whole list. You've got a list. Okay. Off you go.
Let's see. I've known him or her for period of time. I've known her for ages, for example.
Yeah. And obviously with that one, the idea that it can't be, because it's unusual for it to be the continuous form.
Yes.
So that, I think that's quite a useful one in that sort of sense. Yeah. How about I've been mming for ages. I've been waiting for ages. I've been seeing him for ages. I've been looking for it for ages.
Okay, so we're going into the continuous territory here. Oh, I didn't prepare myself for that.
Sorry, am I allowed that?
Okay, I'll give you that one, because I do actually have how long have you been here? And I suppose we can extend that to how long have you been verb plus ing. And I actually really love this one as well, because you can incorporate how long of, and you that little bit of pronunciation there, how long have you, which I think is super useful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How about you've had your hair cut, or you've got a new dress or whatever. Okay. So for noticing things about people.
Love it. Okay. I've had a blank day or week, or something like that.
That's nice. Yeah. For unfinished time. Definitely. Yeah. That's a good one. How about, have you heard about?
Oh, yeah, got that. And that's good as well, because you can follow that with another present perfect sentence. Have you heard Mary's had her baby? Yes,
absolutely. I think that sort of thing as well is really useful, because it's a very nice sort of fluency chunk. It makes you sound quite fluent, makes you sound as if you're, it's very sort of friendly, normal, idiomatic type of conversation starter, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then you can incorporate a response to that. Have you heard so-and-so's died? Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
So you could get a little two-line dialogue going on here. And then you could...
Nice intonation potential there too.
And then you could follow that even with a response question, switching to the past simple, oh my God, when did that happen?
When did it happen? Absolutely. Yeah. I think that sort of thing, because it's often quite hard to think of any kind of authentic context in which you would use the present perfect repeatedly, because we just don't. We tend to say, have you heard about blah, blah, blah? And then it's, as you say, she did this yesterday, and then we obviously would switch into the simple past, because we'd be talking about a specific event. So I think it is the sort of thing that needs to be taught in lexical chunks and in context on multiple occasions, as you say.
And also, if you are sort of expanding that, like, have you heard? Oh my God, when did that happen? You're not looking at it in isolation. You're seeing it in combination with other grammar structures as well, which again, much more realistic.
Yeah.
Okay. Blank is the superlative adjective I've ever past participle. So, for example, New Zealand is the most beautiful place I've ever been to.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. It's the biggest mountain I've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the and with questions as well. I mean, obviously that makes it really easy for what's the most beautiful place you've ever been to? What's the worst holiday you've ever had? It's always more fun when you talk about the bad things. In my experience, tends to make people talk more.
And then again, like switching to the past simple for specific detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Your turn, I think.
My turn. How about what have you been doing?
Oh, lovely.
Again, I think it's another really common sentence starter. And, again, you probably wouldn't reply very much in the present perfect there. Yeah, you could do, oh, you know, I've this and that, but it probably would be this and that. I've
not much
been working really hard, or so perhaps you would use that. But then again, switching probably to more specific, simple past type of explanations about your day-to-day doings, whatever you've been doing.
And also a perfect opportunity to learn those little lexical chunks as a response, like not much or nothing special. I mean, all of this is really valuable conversational language. Yeah.
The other thing with that as well, I've got here is, I've just been doing something. Again, it's the continuous form, but I think that's another interesting one, because often where the two forms are possible, we often prefer the continuous form. You know, I've just been hanging around, or I've just been chilling with my mates, or whatever it is. So I think that,
or vibing, as the kids say.
Vibing. Oh,
I know. One of my students used it like last year. I was like, I'm too old. I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming it means like.
Clearly, you do now. There you go. Learning from your students, always nice.
Yeah. Okay. Is it my turn or my turn?
I think it's yours.
Yeah. I've never.
Oh, okay, all right. I've never. I think that comes under have you ever. I think that's sort of so. But yeah, fair enough. I've never.
Okay, can I expand that? Maybe like something like I've never been here before.
Ah, okay. There used to be a radio program about, you know, I think it's called I've Never Seen Star Wars, and it was sort of people who had never done something which most people have done, you know.
Right, okay.
So that's quite a nice thing. You could perhaps have a list of things which people commonly have done, and maybe talk about things that you haven't done and whether you'd like to or not, I suppose. Yeah, that's nice. A bit of a twist on the normal have you ever. Have you never? What have you never done?
Or you could have a drinking game, you know, that never have I ever. You could bring the shot glasses in and away you go.
Right.
Maybe
your classes are going to be really popular. Yes. With all those 14-year-olds.
Oh, I do adults, so it's fine. It's fine. Okay, your turn.
I think I've kind of, you've made me run out of my list. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
I've got a few.
You won. Oh, go on then.
Okay. I've always liked, or I've always loved.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I haven't done it yet. I'll do it later. Or I haven't done it. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Okay, my well is dry. So let's move on.
Good. I was starting to get worried.
No, that's it. But I think we've given the listeners a bit of a bang for their buck there.
Good.
All right. I think that just about wraps it up. Jo Gakonga, I'm so privileged that you have, you know, spared your time to chat with me, and I really hope, well, I know that people listening will get something out of this, so I just want to say thank you very much.
You're very welcome. No problem at all.
Final question, actually, where can people find you on social media?
Well, I try to spread myself about if I can. So my website is www.elt-training.com. You have to put the hyphen in because somebody else is called ELT Training. And a cheek, very, very cheek of it. I'm also on Facebook, Jo Gakonga, and occasionally on Instagram. I had a little flutter with Instagram, but I seem to have gone off that ELT Training. You'll find me for ELT Training on Instagram. So, but my website's the main area, and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel at ELT Training, again, all one word. But my website's the main place, and that's where all my courses are. So there's quite a lot of free things. There's things for novice teachers and trainee teachers, CELTA trainees, and then there's things also for teachers. So I've got like a free course that helps you to apply for CELTA, gives you an idea of what it's about and gives you some top tips. Another one that gives you some top tips. I've got a grammar course for people who don't know what the present perfect is or what a uncountable noun is, the sort of things that you do need to know before you teach English, because your learners will know that language. They'll know what those things are called. So if you don't, you're going to look, they're going to lose confidence in you pretty quickly. And then I've got also a course called Teaching Grammar Communicatively, which talks about a lot of the ideas that we've sort of mentioned today about the important things about teaching grammar in a way that means you're not just lecturing at your learners, but actually involving them and hopefully making it more useful and engaging for them. So go ahead and have a look. I say lots of free stuff, some paid courses too.
Thank you very much, Jo.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. So if you are not subscribed to Everything EFL podcast, I don't know why, do it now. If you are on social media, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm on Everything EFL Teacher. I give you a few little tidbits of content, but if you want the really juicy stuff, go to my Facebook page, Get Away From That Course Book. Tell your colleagues about me. That's the best way for this podcast to grow. Share the love, guys. Bye.
Bye.